Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for our City Council work sessions. We have one item on the agenda today, and that is the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. This will be our year-end report and 2020 project update. Yes, Will is presenting. Okay.
All right. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Will Shoemaker, and I oversee the City of Raleigh's Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. As was stated, we want to go over the year-end report, the 2020 traffic calming, the final ballot, look at some data and some trends, and then look at the next round of projects that we want to look at moving forward. So, the presentation. All right. All right. So, looking at the 2021, this is really informational. We are still a very popular program with hundreds of requests coming in, with speed limit reductions being the most common request that we receive. This has historically been a citizen circulated petition where we needed 75% of the signatures, 75% of the residents to sign a petition saying that they are in favor of the speed limit reduction. At the 2020, October 2020 update to the policy, we revised this to a ballot process where it is an opt-out process where residents can reach out, request a speed limit reduction, and if 50% of the residents along the street, as long as they don't vote no, the speed limit reduction moves forward and comes to you at the next available council agenda. Also, between the last time that we reported out to you with a year-end report, we have completed 9 projects, 4 traffic calming projects, 3 neighborhood streetscape projects, and 2 pilot project installations. I'd like to clarify that this is the last time that we're going to report out the difference between traffic calming projects and neighborhood streetscapes. That is a legacy of some historical old structures that at the October 2020 policy update, we really simplified the process and combined these 2 lists, but we had 3 older neighborhood streetscape projects that were working through the system. So they have now worked through and they have been completed and are on the ground. This is the list of the streets that have been completed. There's more information in the memo in the backup, but as you can see, we've reduced the 85th speed on all those streets. We're seeing pretty good volume reductions, although that's not the main purpose, but you can see that there has been fluctuations. There are 3 streets here that we do not have any data. We do approximately 6-month after studies, and they have not been on the ground long enough for those evaluations to be completed. And so this rolls us into the next round of 20 projects that we are going to request council authorize us to begin working on. Again, there's more information in your backup, but here's just a list of the top 10 and their point total. These are ranked based on the current policy and using a worst first approach where the streets with the highest score have the highest quantifiable need, and we're trying to address those first. And here are the 11 through 20. So this is the total of the next streets that we're hoping to start working on very soon. So we've been through a number of different ballot and project cycles. Pre-2017, when this program was first started, the traffic calming was a circulated petition program, and in 2013, 2014, some residents came before council and expressed their concern with that approach. This program was put into the T&T committee, and then it came out in 2017 as a ballot process. We have been tracking the data and the ballots from that time to really determine the health and viability and the efficiency and effectiveness of that change. And since that time, we're seeing only about a 24% approval rating from the streets that meet all balloting requirements. This includes the on-street and neighborhood participation and approval thresholds. Of those streets that fail, we're seeing about around half, so around 44% are coming back to us and saying, hey, just because we failed this ballot doesn't mean that our problems have just gone away, and we still think we have a problem. So we go back out, reevaluate the streets, and we're finding that the issues that led to previous project offerings still exist. And like I said, about 44% of previously failed ballot initiative projects are back on our list and will be eligible for a future project offering. Of the 46 completed projects since 2010, when the program was first created and the first project started rolling out, we have been quite effective at hitting our targets with an average speed reduction of just under 10 miles an hour. And to put that in context, all projects are designed to hit as close as we can to the speed limit, and we're finding that typical traffic flow is within about 1.25 miles per hour of the posted speed limit. So if the posted speed limit example is 25, we're seeing that most people are going about 26.25 miles an hour or under. The average volume reduction is around 16%. Again, that is not our core reason. We're not trying to reduce volumes on these public streets because they are public streets. But this shows us, or this leads to us believing that a lot of the streets that have really good connections out to thoroughfares or connecting multiple thoroughfares, we are better encouraging those drivers that are using our local streets and our neighborhood streets as throughputs to stay on those thoroughfares, and we're seeing that we're really being effective at keeping local traffic local with traffic calming projects. And so, keeping all of those historical trends in mind, wanted to present that to you as we go into the 2020 final ballot results. So in October of 2020, Council approved the next 20 streets to go forward, and we've been working with them since early in 2021, and we've worked through the entire process. As a reminder, in April of 2021, we did the first ballot asking if they wanted to further explore traffic calming with those 20 streets. We had 4 that passed all ballot thresholds, and at that time, Council directed staff to move forward 15 streets. There was 1 street that did not meet approval and participation thresholds, so it was determined at that time that that street should be removed from project contention. But we worked with 19 streets to go through 2 different design periods, and then a final ballot asking if they wanted the traffic calming project constructed. And these are the 5 that met all policy thresholds. No action is needed on these. I just wanted to present out what these 5 streets are. We are actively working to convert the presentation documents to construction documents and get these built as soon as possible. This next slide are the 10 current streets that meet all approval thresholds but failed at least one of the participation thresholds. This is, again, going back to the previous slide that only 24% of historical projects are meeting all approval thresholds. And looking at 5 out of 19, that's right around, I think, 78, 79%. So this it falls in line with that historical final ballot information that we're seeing. With these 10 streets, looking at them, you can see that some of them got relatively close to the minimum participation thresholds, but they all fell short. Lyndhurst Drive in particular, you can see that the on-street participation was extremely high with a very high approval threshold. And then looking at the neighborhood approval, it was also extremely high, but they will miss out on a project because they did not hit the minimum 25% of the neighborhood participation. So with this, at the end, we are going to recommend that Council consider moving these forward and waiving the participation thresholds for these 10 streets so that we can move forward with these and put projects on the ground. And so 5 were approved, 10 we're recommending move forward. There are 4 left that failed multiple of the different thresholds, various participation and street approval, as well as neighborhood participation and neighborhood approvals. So after this data is presented, we're going to roll into some policy changes that we believe will actually be very beneficial to getting more projects on the ground, lower barriers to entry that are in alignment with recommending the previous slide, those 10 streets moving forward. But we wanted to definitely present these 4 streets to council for more consideration, or so that they can be considered, because like we previously discussed, just because they did not meet the ballot thresholds does not mean that the problem or the speeding compliance issue is just going to go away. And if history is an indication, at least 2 of these streets will likely come back before us and go through this process again at some time in the future. So this rolls into some proposed policy revisions based on the trends and the data that we're seeing that we think would be a very positive change to the NTMP program. We've more information and a detailed outlining of the policy changes is in the memo. But to summarize, in the big picture items here are kind of four buckets. Speed limit reductions. We're recommending that you allow staff to use context on certain streets instead of solely relying on a vehicular volume threshold. Current policy dictates that if there are 4,000 or more vehicles using a road, we lower the speed limit to 30 miles an hour. And if it's under 4,000 vehicles per day, we would lower it to 25 miles an hour. This does not allow us, the current policy does not allow us to take any specific context into our evaluation. And a great example of that is Fairview Road at 5 Points. So because it is a big draw and a lot of people are driving and going to the restaurants and shops in this area, the section of Fairview Road northwest of the 5 Points intersection had greater than 4,000 vehicles per day. So we as staff lowered it to 30 miles an hour. Residents reached out to us as staff as well as the council, and we came and presented that data to council previously, and it was ultimately recommended that Fairview be lowered to 25 miles an hour. That action was taken, and the speed limit is 25 miles an hour currently. So this policy change would then give staff the ability to take really those context-sensitive, unique street things into consideration. So it's not specifically solely a volume consideration as well for streets such typical to Fairview Road. Moving on to the traffic calming projects themselves, the traffic calming ballot, we recommend removing the on-street and neighborhood participation thresholds with the core result intention of being increasing project output based on the participants' approval rating. As was presented previously, as the policy currently is, we're only seeing about 24% of streets meet all on-street neighborhood participation and approval thresholds, with the main concern and the main barrier to entry being that participation aspect. Rolling into the next one is kind of a sub-point. We don't want to throw up our hands and say that we do not want participation. We're just going to go out and do these projects. That is absolutely not the case. We want to increase awareness, and in talking with residents through this process, it has been mentioned that something that would be really, really good or really potentially beneficial would be to place informational yard signs during the ballot periods. This way, we can have bring awareness to people that have misplaced or didn't see their ballot come through or thought it was junk mail, and with information on how to contact us and just to generally get more awareness in that neighborhood. As an example, Roanoke Park Drive, after the initial ballot, a number of residents took it upon themselves to go out and make some yard signs, and they actually passed the first balloting cycle. And for whatever reason, that same group did not put out the yard signs for the final ballot vote, and they did not meet the participation threshold for on-street. So using that method, and seeing the successes that it has had, we're very optimistic that this will increase participation, but we definitely want to lower the barriers so that we can try to get more projects on the ground. And then one last thing is the allowance of traffic calming outside of the NTMP. We want to work with various stakeholder groups to implement traffic calming solutions, whether this is through private development, or this is other City of Raleigh programs. Uh, the intent is not to just blanket the city with speed humps or for a two-lot subdivision on a neighborhood street to back their way into a traffic calming project. We're really targeting these new subdivision streets or streets that exist where the developer controls all the properties around it, and it's almost a complete redevelopment. The intention is that we'll be looking at the problems, and it will be baked into the cake prior to these streets coming and being accepted and getting onto our city's network. Jed, my boss, uses the metaphor of we're chopping wood as fast as we can, trying to get projects out, but private development keeps throwing more wood on the pile faster than we can get projects out. So with this and working with them and partnering with them, we're hoping that we can finally get our arms around the existing street network, as well as identify future streets that we think that will have a potential need for traffic calming, and get that put into place from the very beginning. Again, one thing, this is not a mandate. This is just a shift from a strict non-allowance to an allowance of traffic calming solutions through private development and other City of Raleigh projects. And then also with the City of Raleigh projects, they have their own outreach and public engagement, and the expectation is that with those outreach efforts, traffic calming would be presented with that as part of their project, so that we can get really good public engagement and comments on those aspects as well. So looking at the policy revision expectations, trying to determine if the juice is worth the squeeze in making these changes. So we're finding that the current policy guidelines are really creating barriers for entry to get projects constructed and projects on the ground. Looking at the historical data going back to 2017, we would expect around 80% of the traffic calming projects offered previously would have moved forward based on the just by looking at the approval threshold. If we would have removed the participation thresholds, and again, you can see that with the 10 streets that we're recommending move forward. So that'd be 15 out of 19. I don't have a calculator. I think that's 78 point something percent, if memory serves, and that really compares to the contrast of currently we're at about 24%. And then the expectation from traffic calming from groups outside of the NTMP. Again, we're not trying to blanket the city with speed humps or anything of that nature. Excuse me. We're really just trying to implement these things in the beginning when we see fit through the transportation review, the private development review team, partnering with them, bringing in the fire department so that they can review these plans, so that we can hopefully get these solutions in place before the streets come online, before the public and residents start buying into neighborhoods, so that they can move into streets and move into neighborhoods that don't have to come to the NTMP in the future to try to resolve issues. And this really is trying to, again, create a manageable list, because currently there's a finite number of streets that exist on Raleigh's network that we really want to focus on. With the continued increase of streets with private development, it's diluting the existing list with new streets. So streets that have been on the list potentially have to wait longer because these new streets keep coming to us and keep qualifying. So we're really trying to solve the new streets coming online with very straightforward and strategic traffic calming implementations, partnering with private development and other City of Raleigh groups, so that we can focus on the existing street network. So a summary of the three action items that we're hoping to hear from you today. The expectation is that we want to hear from you, answer any questions. If there are any tweaks or changes to any of the recommendations, we would go back, work on these, and it would come in a consent agenda item at the February 1st meeting. That would give us time if there are changes. But the summary of the proposed changes and revisions that we are recommending today would be to approve the 2022 project priority list, those 20 streets, so that we can go ahead and start working with those neighborhoods to get the designs and public engagement in these projects on the ground. We're recommending that you waive the participation threshold for the 10 streets that met all the approval thresholds but just failed the participation. This would mean that we get 15 projects on the ground with this cycle. Again, there were 4 streets that did not hit multiple of the policy thresholds, and we're not recommending they move forward because they aren't in alignment with the policy revisions that we're recommending. But again, just because they voted no does not mean that the problems just disappear. The speed compliance issues will likely persist, and we'll likely go through the process with, looking at historical data, 2 of the 4 in the future if they request reevaluation. And then the last thing that we are recommending is to approve the proposed policy revisions to try to lower the barriers of entry for people to get more projects on the ground a little bit more efficiently, as well as allowing private development and other City of Raleigh groups to implement traffic calming solutions into their projects so that we can try to target areas of need outside of this and really have an all-hands-on-deck approach to solve or move towards a solution of traffic calming. And that ends my presentation. I'll be happy to discuss in detail any of these things further or definitely answer any questions that any of you may have.
Hi, does anybody have questions for Will? Okay, Councilmember Fort, and then Councilmember Buffkin, and then Councilmember Knight.
Thank you. Will, on your slide presentation, pages 5 and 6, you have 2022 traffic calming project list. Would it be speed limit reductions that are anticipated on these streets, or is there some other type of traffic calming, or is there a mixture?
So this is actual physical traffic calming. Part of the policy that we've changed is that all streets need to go through a speed limit reduction first, and that's the case because we are finding that people are coming to us and just saying, please help, we need speed humps, we need traffic calming. And so historically we've gone out and we've put in traffic calming projects, and then once in place we saw a couple streets that said that, well, we still feel like people are speeding, can we get a speed limit reduction? And then we've put projects on the ground that are designed to a 35-mile-an-hour speed and with the speed limit of 25. So we really tried to clean that up. So all projects moving forward have the lowered speed limit to their lowest ability. Because that change was made in October of 2020, there are a couple streets that were previously eligible for traffic calming, like physical traffic calming treatments and projects. So part of that is we will be reducing the speed limit with those streets in association and in concurrence with the projects.
Okay, because I think on number 15 on page 6, Sierra Drive, we just got a request to do a speed limit reduction. I think it came in yesterday. So if it's already on the list, then we could address that with the constituent that submitted. So
absolutely.
Councilmember Buffkin.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Schumacher, thanks for your presentation. I'm pretty proud of all the work that's going on here and consistently get good feedback, not just on the program, but specifically your handling of it and your working with the community. So thank you for all you do. Congratulations on that. Keep doing a great job for us. I just love the iterative approach of constantly improving this program. And thank you for all those efforts. I do have a couple questions. So I was looking in your memo on page 6 at the traffic calming priority list. And I think you alluded to it earlier, but could you just help me understand with maybe a little more detailed explanation? How is it the projects that were evaluated in 2017 and 2018 haven't gotten to the top of the list yet? And well, yeah.
Absolutely. That's definitely a great question. So this program is set up as a worst first approach. We receive requests from residents that come in We look at 5 main criteria. We look at speed, crashes, volume, sidewalk, and then other unique pedestrian generators. All those things get fed into an algorithm of sort that determines a total score. And then that total score goes onto the priority list, and the streets get ranked based on that. So the highest score gets first priority. So certainly a street could get on the list and have to sit there for a little while, and we're definitely working to shorten those lead times. But again, this is a worst first approach, where streets with the worst quantifiable need are getting addressed first, and we're working down the list. Certainly the expectation and the hope is to really continually improving, getting more and more projects on that list to shorten the list so that the wait time decreases. But at this point, certainly there are some streets that are waiting longer than others that got evaluated more recently.
Thank you for that. And if I could, just a brief follow-up. So I understand that, and I think that's, the best way to do the program given our limited resources. However, I do think there's an element of fairness here where folks, 3-5 years ago went through the process, got it evaluated, and they're still waiting. So I wonder what you think of maybe an outside time limit. At some point, even though it's not the worst, could a project, because of the passage of time and the I guess commitments that have been made to address the situation, at some point we just say, after 5, 6, 7 years, the project goes to the top of the list because of the time passage. Would that be something that would be workable as a policy revision?
We could certainly look into that. One kind of nuance is that streets can request reevaluations at 1-year intervals. So just because a street has a 2020 evaluation date listed, it doesn't mean that it's been on the list only for 1 year. So there is certainly some nuance to that, but we can absolutely look into a time restriction, a time evaluation. Current policy is that if it has been on the list for a period of 5 years without a reevaluation, we automatically trigger a reevaluation to see if conditions have changed. Because with Raleigh growing, there could be a street connection, there could be a litany of different things that come up that change the nature of the street, which is maybe why we haven't heard from people requesting a reevaluation that time period. So it's certainly something that we can look into and do a deeper dive into to see how the equity and how that can work into the program as a whole.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you for that. And Mayor, at the appropriate time, I've got a couple projects that I'd like to ask for the council's help in moving forward, but I will hold that until you're ready.
Okay, one thing I just wanted as a follow-up, just want to make sure we understand what the unintended consequences are if people or streets are automatically moved up. So taking that into consideration. Councilmember Knight was next, and then I saw Councilmember Melton with his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Shoemaker. As you know, and as I think most other people know, I'm very interested in this program, and Mr. Shoemaker and I have had a lot of conversations about it, and because I do think this is one of the programs that most impacts our residents' daily lives. And so I got a few questions for Mr. Shoemaker. First of all, I appreciate y'all making it easier for residents to initiate the process. And I think you're continuing to move in that direction, and I support that, making it easier for these processes to get started. Speed limits. We're aware that other cities are moving in the direction of having a standard 25 miles per hour in certain categories, I guess, neighborhood streets. I think that's something we should look at. Y'all may already be looking at that, so we don't have to go through this street by street. In all these, at least in my folks I've talked to in my district, all of them want it. That if they live on a neighborhood street, they want it to be 25 miles an hour. And so maybe instead of doing it street by street, we look at standardizing that at 25 miles an hour. That's something that I would like for us to look more into. A couple things. I think I understand this, but are all traffic calming projects in your program have to be citizen or resident initiated, or does staff initiate any of these projects, or can they?
So at this time, every single street that is on our list has come from someone reaching out to me saying, hey, I think we have a problem. And then we go out and evaluate. And if there is, we quantify that.
Okay. So I do appreciate y'all looking at, I guess, future new green space, if you will, developments to sort of incorporate these, just as we do now with sidewalks. And again, I see sidewalks as a form of traffic calming. So I think we need to be thinking of how we work with these two programs. But as we require sidewalks now for, in developments, we could be looking at requiring, and I know you didn't like to use that term, but looking at requiring these other forms of traffic calming that would be appropriate for what what the development is going to look like. So I think that's something we need to think about. We do with sidewalks. Sidewalks is a form of traffic calming. Why don't we not limit it to sidewalks? So I think that's something we could be thinking of. Get it done at the beginning and have the developers pay for it, right? As opposed to the rest of us.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something to look at. I support all your recommendations that you put out there. Another thing is, with the sidewalk program, we're I guess you'd say they may not phrase it like this, but we're sort of so behind that we've stopped and trying to refigure how we're going to organize and prioritize. To Mr. Buffkin's point, I think we got to figure this out. I don't think it is fair to have these sitting out there for long periods of time. Madam Manager, I think there may be a budgetary aspect to this that I'm interested in looking at. If the demand is great from our citizens, I think we need to respond budgetarily. And so I'm interested, as we go through the budget process, to look at this program to see if there are greater budget needs to this program. I just don't think it's fair for the citizens to have these expectations, and they're sitting out there for many years, and then they get the worst of first approach they're getting jumped ahead of. So I would like us to look at that from a budgetary perspective. Just looking here if there's anything else. Thank you. I think that's it. Again, from the complete streets perspective, I think sidewalks need to be thought of as we think of traffic calming as one of the approaches that we can incorporate with your program or alongside your program. So thank you, and look forward to working with you as we continue to respond to citizen needs and improve the program.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Councilmember Melton.
I have a question, I guess, for the city manager. I know when we did our strategic plan in 2020, we added Vision Zero to our strategic plan, and I believe that we funded a Vision Zero coordinator in this year's budget. So I was just curious, do we have someone on board yet, and what role do they play in this program, and also coming up with the speeds that we're reducing?
So very good question, Councilmember Melton, and that is one of our topics for our 4x4 conversation next week. So you kind of got ahead of us, but yes, so we do have plans and provisions in place to follow through on seeing that program through, which would ultimately help with addressing some of the concerns and issues that have been raised as part of today's conversation. So more to follow next Thursday.
Okay. Councilmember Branch.
William, definitely thank you. I remember when I first joined the council in 2015, we really didn't have a real structured program. We try to work and go through, and as you stated, we have changed how the petition process has worked, how thresholds are determined. And the thing I like is that we're still evolving. We're evolving to the things that are happening and going forward. So I definitely want to thank you for that. And as we continue to work, and so one thing's for my fellow council members to keep in mind too is as we work to increase the number of projects done, we also have to look at staffing. It's not just the labor part, it's the staffing part. So we need to make sure that we're working to ensure that the staff has everyone they need in order to implement. Because the last thing we want to do is go and move up projects and not be in position to successfully complete them. So that's something that we need to look at holistically as we move forward. So I look forward to us moving these recommendations forward, and just want to thank you for the work that you've done and continue to do, and the timeliness of the department in responding to citizens when they reach out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Buffkin, I know that you have yours. I just want to say to staff, thank you for being so proactive, especially working as developments occur. This will really move us ahead. So thank you for that. And thank you for looking at innovative approaches and not just doing things the same old way or the way it's always been done. So thank you for that. Councilmember Fort.
I have a motion after Councilmember Buckin makes his comments.
Well, we usually don't vote in work sessions. Is this something that needs our vote today, City Manager?
It just depends on what Councilmember Ford wants to bring to the table. If it's about the citywide speed limit, you may recall that there is an initiative in our strategic plan that sort of kind of follows up to, I think it was Councilmember Knight's question about staff initiating some of these changes and requests as opposed to it being initiated by citizens in neighborhoods. So there is a lot of work that's happening in the strategic plan to also address some of that. So it just depends on what our motion is. And again, we will talk a little bit more about this next Thursday in our 4x4s, and that should probably give a greater degree of clarity.
Okay. Councilmember, thank you. Councilmember Buffkin, you said there was a couple of things that you wanted.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. And I think Councilmember Fort and I are on the same track here. We've got a few projects that did not meet the policy thresholds. And if today's not the day to propose waiving those thresholds and moving the projects forward, then I'd like to get it back on our agenda for a formal council vote. But if the council's willing and ready to do it today, I'll make the motion right now.
Will?
So we plan to come back and formalize these with a council vote at the February 1st. So I guess if you have streets that you want to move forward, just tell us and we'll put that into our into the next council agenda so that it can be voted on at that point. But we want to hear from you about the streets.
If you can both publicly kind of make that statement right now in directing staff, I think that will be helpful.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I would like to make that request that staff come back on the 1st with a agenda item proposing to waive the policy thresholds with respect to the 2 Harps Mill projects that are listed on slide 10 of staff's presentation.
Okay, Councilmember Fort.
I'll be making the same motion with respect to Kaplan Drive and Library Drive.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, staff, you have everything you need to come back to us on February 1st then.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And is the presentation completed now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you back here at 1 o'clock for our regular meeting. Thank you.
Thank y'all.